Thank you. And next, we would like to welcome Bérénice Bellina with her presentation on globalization along the early maritime Silk Road, a view towards a systemic and plural history from the Isthmus of Kra.
Good morning, dear Professor Chen Xingtan, dear Professor Wang Wei, dear esteemed members of the selecting committee. I wish to express my gratitude for inviting me to join the conference. It is a great honor to be speaking here today and to receive an award, a field award for the research project I will summarize here. This research focuses on the past globalization that took place along the eastern part of the Maritime Silk Road. Several historians of modern Asia, especially those belonging to the world and global history movement, have used the maritime-centered and longue-durée Brodelian framework to analyze past society's evolution. In this frame, the maritime basins are envisaged as cradles for cultural integration, favoring the emergence of common cultural practices amongst distant but connected communities. The research project I summarize here represents an attempt to comprehend the initiation of one past globalization before called Indianization that linked South Asia and Southeast Asia for several centuries. The concept of Southeast Asian Indianization began with an externalist view that emphasized South Asian external influences with the diffusion of a set of religious and political thoughts and practices. In the 60s, it was followed by an autonomous paradigm stressing endogenous factors of change in Southeast Asian societies. In the 80s, the 80s opened the avenue for mixed paradigms, emphasizing innovations resulting from the local adoption and adaptation of Indian models. However, the current predominant view is still a unilateral one, with one Indian core and Southeast Asia as a periphery. This process is also commonly seen as a historical, political, religious process to which are associated the Indianized states that emerged by the mid-1st million AD, with their leaders and their artistic apparatus. This view is partly the result of a late prehistoric period that had long been too little invested, and the consequent poor knowledge we have of the political, economic, and social structures of this period. It is also the result of a long tradition, academic tradition, focusing on groups providing writings. However, in South and Southeast Asia, most groups did not write, and most writings available only focus on political and religious facts. The research project presented here brings to the discussions new elements from the late prehistoric sites and craft industries. There's thus belonging to a period prior to the cultural exchanges that are supposed to be significant. The research is also conducted within the renewed framework of global and post-colonial studies, emphasizing connections and giving voices to various groups that the academic world qualified as marginal. I will begin introducing the project and proceed with the synthesis of the results, which consist of a regional cultural sequence that can be divided in two stages. From the mid-late 1st millennium BC, the region witnessed the emergence of complex trading polities. Those already display an early form of urbanism, and in the case of Kawasaki, of a cosmopolitan nature, hosting culturally hybrid industries. They then evolved as a confederation of ranked and specialized port settlements, which relied on a multi-ethnic hinterland with far-reaching allied networks embracing both maritime basins. This research draws a dissented visions of this past globalization. The research was carried out by the French Thai Archaeological Mission in Peninsula Thailand since 2005. It is a collaboration between the CNRS, the Center for National Research, to which I belong, and Silpakorn University in Bangkok, represented by Praon Silapant and Professor Rasmi Shukondej. And it's also a collaboration with the Fine Arts Department. From 2017, the project extended to Myanmar. The French Archaeological Mission in Peninsula Thailand, Myanmar, is a collaboration with the Department of Archaeology and of the Ministry of Culture in Myanmar and the University of Mandalay. The research is conducted in the Isthmus of Kra, in the Upper Thai Malay Peninsula, a piece of land that acted as a natural crossroad between the South China Sea and the Bay of Bengal. Running along the peninsula, the chain of terracerim is punctuated by valleys whose rivers flow along its slope, some of which constituting passages called transpeninsular routes. These routes cross different environments, forested interior, marine, coastal areas that used to be occupied before by groups adapted to their specific ecological niche. Until recently, the predominant view was that transpeninsular routes represented the dangerous path and had not been used for international trade. The objectives of this research are to study the coevolution of the different groups present in the peninsula, be them local or exogenous, so foreign, and to study the coevolution of these groups and their environment in relation to trade. Alternatively, the aim is also to determine how each of these groups contributed to the regional historical trajectory. The project first looks at the cultural evolution of the various populations in relation to long-distance exchange, and in particular, through the Maritime Silk Road. The project studies sites of various nature belonging to different environments, such as open-air sites, cave sites, settlements, burial deposits, relay stations. In total, it is 36 that have been investigated, some intensively, others are known from survey and surface collection. A large focus is given to settlements, which in tropical environments have been more rarely excavated because of the poor preservation of their remains. A total of 7 settlements were investigated, each providing important information on craft production and distribution. The project involves a multidisciplinary team of specialists in material science, GIS, archaeobotany, etc. But at the heart of this project, there is the French technological approach for industries to characterize each group's socio-technological system. The spatial distribution of the different technological groups provides a cultural sequence of the social groups, of their organization and interactions. So this is the first period. In the course of the late 5th and early 4th century BC, local port settlements acting as regional economic and cultural centers emerge, such as Kawasaki and Kawasaki on the eastern coast and Pukaotong on the western coast. They already display complex urban and political models and an elaborate economic organization. They not only concentrate large ranges of imports from South Asia and the eastern part of South China Sea, but also active workshops. Those workshops manufactured products of a pan-regional style I've called late prehistoric South China Sea style. This style represents a set of artifacts shared by communities along the South China Sea, from the Mainland Peninsula to the Philippines. The technological study of these artifacts revealed that those combined foreign raw materials and skilled techniques, mostly Indian, and that they were locally produced, sometimes under the aegis of foreign artisans, often Indians. These goods were redistributed at local and regional levels from Thailand to the Philippines. This shared style is culturally hybrid, combining South Asian and Southeast Asian cultural traits, this and soon as early as the 4th century BC. It thus attests that the already well-grounded maritime connections of lowland groups towards both the Bay of Bengal and more strongly towards the South China Sea, as soon as the mid-1st million BC. The largest center for the production of these culturally hybrid products is currently Khao Sam Keo. The mission excavated the site from 2005 to 2009. It is an urban complex that 50 radiocarbon dates, obtained through charcoal, wood, and other organic materials, placed within the late 5th to the 1st century BCE. The site commanded a transpeninsular trade route and was located 8 kilometers from the east coast. The settlement and spatial distribution of the different technological groups revealed its cosmopolitan nature. The settlement hosted communities of foreign merchants and artisans who lived within urban quarters demarcated by embankments. Its occupation, stricto sensu, extended over 35 hectares with simple and twin parallel earth walls. Those were probably surmounted by wooden palisades. A hydraulic system created a mooring place in Valley 1 and retained waters in Valley 2, possibly for agricultural purposes in Valley 2. The network of habitation on piles and on terraces, and the network was dense and characterized by the accumulations of monumental and domestic terraces and drains. Sorry. Yeah. Two clearly defined zones and two periods emerged from the spatial GIS analysis. A southern area corresponding to hills 1 and 2 represents the initial core of the settlement. It was occupied by local populations and a few foreign artisans, especially from South Asia, who were working there some particular hardstone and glass ornaments. Those were made implementing highly skilled traditional Indian techniques using South Asian or Indian raw material to make ornaments characterized by the early late prehistoric South China Sea style. From the early 4th century BC, local elites in the Kra Peninsula, Kra Isthmus, already show a good knowledge of the Indian industries and have established robust networks allowing the supply of good quality raw materials and the circulation of Indian specialists. I think there is one slide missing. That was okay. Further north, on Hill 3 and 4, corresponding to a later expansion of the settlement, there were communities of foreign merchants and artisans. The latter were indicated by the presence of Indian fine wares, crucibles for high-tin bronze metallurgy, showing parallels in Bengal, as well as the presence of northern Vietnamese and Han Chinese material. At that time, more finished objects were imported, whilst others were kept being produced locally with exogenous technologies, such as heating bronze balls. These locally made artifacts belong to a later phase of the late prehistoric Sarchanese style that then includes more South Asian adapted products. Kawasaki is currently the earliest cosmopolitan trading polity of Southeast Asia. It is a serious candidate for an incipient city-state. This is supported by its monumental constructions that were renovated over several centuries, its complex economic organization with craft activities depending on far-reaching supply and distribution networks and involving foreign specialists. The sources of inspiration for the elaboration of urban spaces in Southeast Asia suggest a combination of regional developments with a mode settlement tradition found in many parts of mainland Southeast Asia and of external inputs. Here, I think, in the case of Kawasaki, most likely from contemporary walled cities of India. Let us now move to another port settlement excavated by the mission in 2013 and 14. Kawasaki is located 80 kilometers south of Kawasaki. It is contemporary to Kawasaki too. It appears built on a similar model as Kawasaki, displaying the same topography, internal organization, mode of construction, but it is smaller and less complex. We did not find surrounding walls or signs of cosmopolitanism. However, Kawasaki and Kawasaki technical systems are strictly identical, characterized by exactly the same skilled hybrid craft industries, and they evolve simultaneously. The sites and technological systems comparisons draws a complex political structure. I suggest this political structure took the form of a confederation of ranked, specialized, and complementary city-states. Kawasaki controlled the exit of another transpeninsular route connecting with sites on the west coast. There is no evidence of foreign communities present at this site, providing further argument that Kawasaki acted as the international marketplace for this confederation. The population lying in the vicinity are visible through manufactured goods found in the funerary deposits in neighboring caves. These goods were partly made in this port. They consisted of stone and glass ornaments and pottery. Several may have been made in order in this regional port, probably mainly Kawasaki. This might also be the case of pottery, which, though the main pottery local type, display some Sahuin decorative style that linked to southern Vietnam and the Philippines. Again, this is an element that forms part of the late prehistoric pan-regional style, this type of pottery, and that can be found in several coastal communities along the South China Sea. Interactions between port and neighboring port groups involve the exchange of agricultural foodstuff, possibly forest and mineral products too, and tin in particular, which sources concentrates in the region near Ranong, so on the west coast, at the exit of the transpeninsular route. The foreign craftsmen present in Kawasaki probably produced goods for local rulers to build their prestige, but also for them to seal alliances with the surrounding population who supplied their local ports, marketplaces, goods for regional trade. The later period, so the second stage, during this later period, probably around the 3rd century BC to the 1st century CE or BC, exchange increase and local groups belonging to different environments appear economically and culturally better defined, archaeologically and are archaeologically traceable now. During this later period, more ports have emerged. Pukaotong and Bang Plural on the west coast in Thailand, and probably in southern Myanmar, OG. Many more foreign groups and imports are found in the peninsula, some now indicating links with the Western world. Ports now concentrate larger ranges of material, indicating the presence of many more social groups there. Imports are now found imports from Han China and from South Asia, as well as more material from the South China Sea, the Philippines, and Taiwan. Some of the hybrid goods of the first period are no longer produced there. This is the case of glass bracelets and also some type of lapidary glass beads. The glass beads appear to be imported as finished products then. The provenance of the raw material for glass has changed too, so there is a change of network. The pan-regional late prehistoric South China Sea style is especially well illustrated with stone ornaments that now include more Indic-adapted material, which includes some symbolic shapes like stupa-like and other Indic imagery. During this period, there are a series of inland sites which attest significant evolutions of the groups living there. Inland sites are of two types. There are caves and there are open-air transshipment and collecting sites, often localized at rivers' tributaries. Cave sites were mainly used for funerary deposits. Many material found there tells us that the foreign influences appear limited. Stone beads also made of imported raw material, like cornelian, they appear rather simple and didn't seem Indic or South China Sea influence. They do not compare with those found in port of trade. These burials never seem to include long-distance imported material. It is likely that the inland groups may have taken forest goods at the transshipment places, but they were not directly involved in trade. Archaeological remains in inland sites are sparse due to the numerous disturbances, among which looting. Nonetheless, the mission has been able to unravel a series of transshipment and collecting places established along the Long Tsuan River basin, to which Kawasaki belong. They provide foreign imports, witnessing the passages of foreign merchants and foreign goods, such as the Dongsan drums of northern Vietnam or southern China, glass and stone beads, Indian fanware. The discovery of these relay stations along a major river basin thus provides crucial evidence missing to support the use of transpeninsula routes for international trade. Other parts of the peninsula attest major cultural changes. From this period, some groups at river mouth, along the coast, in neighboring offshore islands now become visible in the archaeological record. These groups' activities are currently only attested by deposits that we suppose funerary and which are found, as I said, along the coast or offshore. Some of these caves yielded some specific black and red jars that clearly indicate links with the Philippines. They contain some of the material also found in ports and attesting the involvement of these groups in long-distance network of exchange, such as Indian fanware, Chinese ware, and glass and stone ornaments. Caves at the mouth of the rivers and offshore also yielded some of the local Sahuin Kalanai potteries that were probably produced upon order in the regional port. Population using these coastal caves seem to have been in recurrent contact with the Philippines. They developed a style that circulated and developed through time as a result of prolonged and repeated interactions between Thailand and the Philippines. It is conceivable that these foreign groups, those small, very mobile groups, acted as intermediaries during the inter-island trade, and they may well have been those who also brought the nephrite extracted from Taiwan in the regional port of the peninsula, where they were worked into the ornaments following the pan-regional style. It is interesting to note that these maritime, these small, very mobile groups are located at strategic locations, both between ports of trade and river mouth, at the exit of transpeninsular networks. It seems likely that these groups were found, that those groups played an intermediary role, redistributing goods between upstream groups and regional ports. They very much compare with the cenomads of the historical period. Several artifacts now clearly evidence upstream-downstream exchange and special connections between a few estuarine and inland caves. To summarize, in the course of the second period, a larger number of local groups and others who came to the peninsula from South Asia, island Southeast Asia, and mainland Southeast Asia became actively involved in exchange. The local groups in the peninsula appeared more culturally and economically defined and distinct than previously. Other groups, identified in ports of trade and at estuaries, are newcomers. They played an important role in networks as intermediaries. These small groups, who were very mobile, moving free from the peninsula to the Philippines and other islands, also contributed to the spread of common regional traits. I interpret these groups as early sea nomads, who also may have specialized with the maritime Silk roads as intermediaries. In conclusion, this research proposes to envision this past globalization before co-Indianization through the lenses of co-constructions within networks of confederated port cities and the hinterland. An extensive hinterland composed of variously organized groups, for a time allied in a larger connected regional space embracing the two maritime basins. This structure can explain the spread of a pan-regional style whose hybrid nature reflects the various groups that were part of this political structure. The emergence of this centralized structure also crystallized cultural differentiation and economic specialization. Among the groups concerned, some usually referred to as marginal groups, the earliest sea nomads. Those emerge as key actors, as economic and cultural intermediary within this network. This model offers a more balanced representation of exchanges and of the globalization beyond core and peripheries. It draws dynamic networks with fast configuration in which an active chain of intermediaries with probably fluctuating alliances were involved and played an active economic and cultural role. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. For our next presentation.